Okay, next up, I've asked Natalie Clawson if she'll come up and present. And I know she had some handouts as well. Do you want to go grab her handouts? Oh, yeah. Tracy, she'll come around and grab them right down there. Thanks, Tracy. And then, did you want to connect your computer and use that for presentation? Yeah. Okay, looks like it works. Okay. That's great. Thank you very much. I'll reset the time.
I can't see the clock, right?
You can't, so you just have to. Okay. How about this? I'll wave when you're about a minute out. Okay. How's that?
That sounds great.
Is that okay?
Yeah. That sounds great. Thank you. Well, thank you, members of the committee. Thank you for holding this hearing today. These are very important issues, and we're so happy to be able to tell the story of our experience of running as a candidate against this system. It's been very difficult. I think there's a lot of room for improvement as far as transparency and other issues go. One thing, so I have the slides. I'm going to go through that. The handout that I have follows these slides. I wanted you to have your own copy. I'm going to go through them fast, but I wanted you to be able to look at them and look at them closer after this. So this is our vote is sacred, and this is an important issue. I'm glad that we're talking about it today. I have 4 points that I'm going to cover. The first one is about an independent advisor. So we brought that up earlier, and Deidre Henderson was right in acknowledging that there is a conflict of interest in her office. In March, she put out a press release and said that because of this, she would sequester herself from the election, and she would ask Greg Bell to handle any questions that would arise. So as we went forward, we never heard from Greg Bell. Somebody made this meme, put it online. We never heard from him, no emails, no correspondence at all. And so we ended up doing a grammar request, wondering what happened. And here's the result.
You know I like memes. So
I know, that's a good one.
Well done, well done.
Yeah. So the grammar request came back, and we asked, please just give us a contract. Tell us of some of the communications that went in. What role did Greg Bell play in this? The answer was that there was no contract. They cannot find any contract, and they could only find one text message between Greg Bell with the elections office that had anything to do with their elections. And it was this simple text that said, Deidre said, thank you for attending something. And he said, likewise, loved being with you. So we have no reason to think that she sequestered herself. She 100% ran this campaign as our opposing candidate. The second issue is about the hidden petition packets. So this is a huge question about these packets, and it's so interesting what happened with us. So a petition inherently is a public document. It is listed in code as a public document. Greg Bell, he mentioned about about petitions. He says that they should be public so that you, as a check against fraud. And we agree that these documents should be public. It's putting someone on the ballot. We shouldn't be able to verify these. So this is what a petition packet looks like. There's no expectation of privacy when you sign one of these forms. You have somebody at your door who comes door to door. You know the person ahead of you, person below you will see your name. There were 3 people who went in that I know of just days or weeks before we did and asked to see petition packets with no pushback from the Lieutenant Governor's office. All of them were able and granted access to view them. So the first one is Karen Andrews. She lives in Washington County. She arranged it to come up to Davis County she arranged it through the Lieutenant Governor's office and was able to see packets for a school board race. Michael Clara, you heard Michael today. He also had an arrangement with is it still showing? Oh, yeah. He had an arrangement with, reached out to Washington County, and they said that he would have an opportunity to view the packets for Senator Ibsen. And then there was also a candidate in Utah County who reached out to the clerk there. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
I lost you.
Oh.
I lost your presentation for a second. You probably better start over with the meme, just so I can enjoy it again.
Yeah. I like that one.
Maybe unplug it and plug it back in.
Oh, okay.
It might.
Because I see it on my end. Let's see.
There you go.
Oh, good. Okay, so Michael Clara, and then the third one I mentioned is Utah County. A candidate was able to see packets, was granted access to see her opponents. But then everything.
Michael, we're going to get you a better picture too.
Okay, Michael. Good.
Anyway.
He's here in person, so he can do that. But so this is what happened. So then when we asked, then everything changed. No longer were they considered petitions. Now there were these protected documents with a whole different set of rules. And there's the state law never changed, but the way that we were treated changed. So we are informed. So we had several questions. We know there's a criminal investigation going on involving the same company that Spencer Cox had used. They didn't give us packets to view. I asked a series of questions. Did you look at the signatures on both packets? Ooh, I gotta hurry. But they never even answered questions, didn't let us see it. And then they supplied us this document. So here are my questions. We went in to view it. We were denied, weren't able to see anything. This is a document they gave us. This is a section with the private names. So on the left, you can see those are the circulators' names. None of those are marked out as being private or withheld. We can view those, but all of the signers are marked, not all of them, 40% of them were either considered private or withheld. And so we had no information. And I also have law enforcement background, like Michael. I know if someone is hiding something, that's what you go look into. And that's exactly why we wanted to see this information. And as you can see from Michael's presentation, there's a lot of room to have concern about this. Okay, let me keep moving forward. This should not have been treated this way. As you can see, the legislature clearly said that if you want to be private, your information should still be available to political parties and candidates. It's right here in code. It's also on the voter registration when people choose to be private. They know that that's the expectation. It's also currently on the Lieutenant Governor's website. If you're private, we can ask for private information, but not on her packet. But otherwise, we can as candidates. It doesn't make sense. None of these things. We went to court. We have never lost on the merits of our case. All of our cases have been thrown out on motions to dismiss with incorrect facts applied. So we have not lost on any of these issues. And the Lieutenant Governor's office never addressed why we don't get access to see private names when the legislature specifically carved that out in code to provide for that. Okay, third issue, real quick, election interference and inducement. A lot of you followed this. We had on the last day to sign to be a write-in candidate, there are two people who said they wanted to be, we got these text messages from someone who said my coworker was asked to run as a lineman on the last day, and so he filed to run, and that was very concerning. We mentioned conflicts with the Attorney General's office. We reported that to the Attorney General's office. We have a case number. We reported that to the Unified Police Station, and they said, we can't handle issues on election fraud. Those things have to go to the Lieutenant Governor's office. So that's another big problem. We had the AG did nothing about it, and the police department did nothing about it, and the FBI, all three of them were notified and did nothing. This was not some cute little thing. This cost us over $50,000 in court, and we had to change. It's an inducement. This slide shows that 2 days after he filed, he and his mother to run, the Lieutenant Governor's office sent an email saying you need to finish the process. So they were invested enough. They're like, hey, you got to make sure you mark your T's and Q's or whatever, you get everything done right. They had a witness who testified about it. We had text messages and a lot of evidence. No one did anything. It did affect the election. It affected the media coverage. Look what they did. When they asked Cox's campaign, they said no one officially paid. So we don't know what that means, that no one officially paid to recruit him. So here's a case number when we went to Unified Police. Here's a case number when we went to the Attorney General's office. Here is an email that the Lieutenant Governor's office gave me saying that all you need to do is write lineman. This is a huge deal for us in our case because it shows that any inducement was criminal. This email was deleted from my email. My email was hacked, as you can see right here. It was deleted, my trash was emptied that day, and that email disappeared. I had a screenshot, so that's the only reason why I still have that today. Here's the financial disclosures. You can see that he clearly was not running as a candidate. There was no money paid towards his campaign. The Lieutenant Governor sent out an email, said we withdrew. We had a number of costs of having to redo all of our signs. Everything. We had relied on the Lieutenant Governor saying that we were Lyman. That's all we had was Lyman. No one knew Phil's first name. They didn't have it down. And so now there's a Rich, and now there's stories about he's being dropped, that Lyman dropped out of the race. And look what the media did. Every single time they covered the story about Rich Lyman who dropped out, they showed Phil's picture. KSL again, Richard and Carol Lyman, and a picture of Phil. Here's another Google search. Salt Lake Tribune, ABC4, Utah News Dispatch, KSL News, all of them showed Phil. There's not one picture of Rich Lyman online. It was intentional. Here's Rich's picture, publicly available on his Facebook. Nobody used it. Mike Lee said that there's no one who's ever had as much media pushed up against us. So there's poll workers who are telling people that we dropped out. I have hundreds of messages from people who said, I can't believe you withdrew. This affected our race. It was election interference. Fourth, my last one is, these are some concerns. I'll go through it quickly. We asked for cast vote records. The next day, we were told from Deidre, all of our requests were denied. We can have no information about the elections. This is what it looks like from one of the counties. There are 9 standard deviations in our primary race. There is less than 1 in a billion chance that this could have happened organically, but no one can look at it. Even Board of Canvassers cannot look at the information from the primary election. Nobody can get access to any cast vote records. Utah is one of the 3 most restrictive states in the United States. It's all been denied by our opposing candidate. The narrative was that he beat us, that Cox beat us by a lot right out the gate. He had about 50,000 votes, but then it jumped up and then it just nosedived down. He only ended up with about 30,000, 35,000 extra. This needs to be looked into. We have been denied access to see nominating petitions, cast vote records, but that is in the purview of you as your committee that you should. That would be one of my asks, is if you look at these records and see what you can look at from the primary election, there's cause to be concerned. So we did everything we could within the law, State Records Committee. Deidre responds.
Yeah, don't put Dan McKay tweets on here.
Okay,
Like, we can't
I know.
handle
I should have
that.
stopped
No,
there.
don't.
It was a good. It was a good.
That
one.
guy is irresponsible. We can't put that guy on here.
Right.
Anyway.
But we did everything we could. I mean, we did every grammar request. I'm an attorney. We went through the law. We did everything the right way. Denied at every turn. And then Deidre comes out with this narrative saying that we tried to steal an election. Unbelievable. As a chief election officer. These are the ballots that came out. There's a little special hole called a site hole. If you look at them, they're over our names.
Can we take a time out really quickly?
Yes.
Can we all just agree that we all get super emotionally invested in our elections and outcomes, right?
Yes.
I don't doubt that, I don't know for sure, but I know that having been a candidate, and you also have been there, it is probably one of the most stressful things you'll do your entire lives. And so I totally appreciate that you feel frustrated about some of those things.
Right.
Do me a favor. Let's try and keep it about the process and not necessarily impugn the lieutenant governor, so to speak.
That's fine. I feel like this is relevant. The process with
I understand.
a hole in the ballot that is over our names.
Yeah.
And here's more on process. There was never...
That was an interesting point, by the way. Go back to that. That was one
Yeah.
thing that was, you could see based on how it was folded, that you could see if somebody had written in the ballot. And
Right, and you can-
I
and
didn't
there's-
want to walk over that. So
Right,
thanks.
and it was significant enough that Deidre had to address it. And we saw multiple counties where the hole was in different places on the envelope. They always matched up over our name, so it doesn't seem unintentional. There was no, going back to Davis County Clerk being involved in this centralization of power. State code never says that you can do that. It never says that. That never says that multi-county races should be treated different than single county races. That was something that's the Lieutenant Governor's office just began doing. They never had a contract in place to do that. Here's the document. It was never executed, never signed. But money was transferred to Davis County Clerk to do the entire process. The centralization of power is always concerning. None, despite the fact that they testified in front of your peers that the temp workers that were hired by Davis County to validate over 300,000 names, none of them had completed the certification training. Again, this is Michael's point. All of these things did not happen that they affirmed had happened. And then I'll just close with this, and I'll close there. But I just want to, I appreciate you looking into this. This is important. Our elections matter. People are watching this across the state. They're not going away, and they're really paying attention. People are happy that you are taking this time to do this. I appreciate the legislative audit and the scope of it. It was limited to the signature verification. I think it would be appropriate to ask for it to be expanded to look at the primary elections because of all this interference that we saw. I think there's reason to question actually the primary and look at that. And we want a state where we can trust our elections. We want a culture of transparency in Utah. And the legislature's being drug into the middle of this whole thing, even though it's the executive branch who's handling all this. So we appreciate you looking at this. Legislation can be changed, but a lot of these things that happen were not in code, and there's no teeth on it. The lieutenant governor can do what she wants, and you can see the AG and the other offices they're not pushing back against it. But what I think is that I asked you to look at the cast vote records. Really, the only thing that would be fair is if you find what we are finding in this, that we should have a special election. I mean, that's really the only fair outcome if you're seeing what we're seeing from this. But nonetheless, it is important for the people of Utah to be able to know that our elections are clean, and that we would be happy, as Phil has said from the start, if you open the documents and show us that everything was fair, we will concede, we will say thank you, congratulations, Governor, and we'll move on our way. But we have to be able to trust our elections. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Do me a favor. Appreciate she did do a good job. So we don't usually applaud in committee hearings, but are there any questions or concerns or comments online? Okay, seeing none online, I have a couple of questions, and then we'll have the clerk come back up. Just for the legislative branch does not have the ability or doesn't have the power to grant a new election or to have a new primary or do with those things. Like, we don't. The benefit of the legislative branch is we're a great target when everybody's mad. Mm-hmm. But we always have to deal with the future looking backwards, right? And so while I recognize the desire to have another election and do those things, I knowing what I think everybody knows now, the governor might not shy away from that competition either. Yeah. But I think there's process problems that that we can highlight and talk about and try and solve those process things, because we have another election coming up in 2026. We have another one 2 years later, and we're going to be dealing with elections for a long time, at least until the AI just takes over. But right. I want to make sure that we solve any of these process problems so that when there are issues for the public, that it's easy to dig down and solve them in a way that is meaningful and builds trust in the process, if that makes sense. Yeah. So yes. I can't grant you the remedy you'd like, but we certainly can look at the process for the future and try to solve those problems.
Thank you. And I wasn't expecting this body to make that decision at this point, but I do ask you to look closer at this election too, and the cast vote records and the other documents that are hidden from everyone, because I really feel in order to have clean elections going forward, we have to address the issues that happened in this race. Because if we just wait, if we push it off 4 more years, I mean, we had members of the legislature who said, I'm sorry that this happened, and the legislative audit shows he was short. We'll fix it in the next session. I mean, there's always that idea. We'll fix it in the next session. But do we really know what needs to be fixed? And do we realize the extent of the problems?
Well, and that's why I wanted to have the hearing today, so we made sure we understood the things that we need to fix and things that we can fix. The good thing is, with having the many volumes of law that we have in the state of Utah, it seems like the legislature always has a reason, or at least we convince ourselves that there's a reason to meet every year. Mm-hmm. And we will constantly be tweaking and refining these processes until eventually, we hope that there's a perfect day where we get it done. I don't know that will happen as long as there's humans involved and the law has its injustices, right? And some of the, we heard from Lincoln, right? One of the best ways you can deal with an unjust law is to enforce it to its fullest. Mm. And so the hardest part is when you have an unjust law and it's enforced, only then do we then see its, inequities or whatever miscarriages of justice may be considered. Yeah. So I feel badly that you've had to suffer through some of these things that we really haven't dealt with the law much, and the clerks in LG's office will tell you the same, since 2014, right? It's a political hot button issue. Some of us want to see the process go away. I'm one of those. Some of them want to see the process continue in perpetuity and be the only process, and it's another group of folks. Mm-hmm. The problem in dealing with something that's politically hot is it's really hard to get consensus because everybody thinks they've got it figured out. When it's not politically hot, then it's a lot easier to get done, it seems. So
Right.
hopefully we can get some of these solutions in the process and not have these things in the future. So
Good, yes. And I don't think the problem is so much with unjust laws, but the laws not being applied and not being applied fairly. And so I think as you look at future legislation, we need to do things to make sure that there is ramifications if
Sure.
the lieutenant governor does not do these things that she's supposed to,
understand.
especially when she's a candidate.
you did have a question. I did have a question for the committee. Senator Escamillo had a comment, so go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, I'll be very concise, but I thank you for your presentation. And as someone that's lost races, I recognize just your emotional peace connection to this. But you're an attorney, so I do have a more of a technical question on some of those modifications that have been made in this session in response to some of the audits, and there have been multiple audits beyond the one that was introduced this morning with regards to our election process. So it's a comprehensive. I think there's been comprehensive audits on the entire system. Is it your I guess take that our current laws are adequate, or there are still gaps in the laws?
I do think there are gaps, and I think that we should move more in the direction of how initiatives and referendums are treated. It's very different. The standard is very, very different, where if I helped gather signatures for the flag initiative, all of our names were published on the lieutenant governor's website for probably about a year. They were there for a really long time, including all the private names and withheld names, because it was a petition. And that's how these should be acted. We've had so many people reach out to us and said, I don't know if I'm on Cox's list or not. I had someone come to my door. I'm not sure if what happened there. And people need to know, and it's a check against fraud. So I think moving it to more of the transparent process like we already have in place for those initiatives and referendums would be helpful. And I do like Lisa Shepherd's bill too about moving it to the county level. Anything we can do to decentralize it and not have a single clerk's office handle all of it, I think is helpful.
Just one last question on you mentioned in your last statement accountability, and I think that's critical. And if you heard during the audit, I mean, that was something I had a lot of questions about. How do we make people accountable? So do you think our current statute brings the level of accountability that is needed or not?
No, we don't. I mean, we went to...
So enhancements on that accountability,
Yes.
You think are appropriate?
I mean, we were left to go through the judicial system, and there's even a conflicts there with appointments and other such things, and having our cases just thrown out. I don't think there's a lot of accountability there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I don't see any other questions from the committee. So why don't we have the Davis County Clerk